Many myths and stories throughout history set out to teach us important lessons. Lessons we may not always be inclined to learn. Lessons about hubris, arrogance, gambling more than you're willing to lose. This week, we're going to look at one such story. Welcome to Finding Folklore. I am your host Ryan, and this week we are going to be stepping away from Celtic myth and legend to investigate a mythological tale from our Scandinavian neighbours. This is the story of the Asgardians and the Master Builder. Thor was away from Asgard, fighting trolls in the east. With Thor gone, the gods realised Asgard was undefended. This was in the days when Asgard was new. The Aesir and the Vanir had not long come together and were still in the process of building a home. And one day, Odin said, "We need a wall to protect Asgard from all manner of creature that would attack us while Thor was gone. A wall so tall that the largest giant can't cross it. A wall so thick that the strongest troll could not break it. A wall so tight that the smallest ant could not find its way through it." "A wall like that would take us years," said Loki. "Who has time or patience to build such a wall?" "It would take years," said Odin, "but we need the wall nonetheless." The other gods agreed. The next day, Heimdall came into the Odin's chamber. "A man approaches," said Heimdall, watchman of the gods, who missed no one coming to Asgard. The stranger entered the chamber and walked in. "And who are you?" said Odin. "I am a master builder," said the stranger, "and I hear that you are needing a wall built like no other, a wall so large that the largest giant could not cross it, that the strongest troll could not break it, and that the smallest ant could not get through it. I could build such a wall, and I request only 3 small things in return." The gods looked at one another and smiled. "And you think you could build a wall better than the gods?" "I do," said the master builder, "for I am the greatest builder that there ever is, ever was, or ever will be." "And what is it you ask for building our wall?" asked Loki. "Well," said the master builder, "I only want 3 small things. 1, the goddess Freya, the most beautiful of all the goddesses. I want her hand in marriage." "That is no small thing," said Odin, "and I am sure Freya would have something to say about it." Freya looked on, unimpressed, but didn't say anything. "The second thing I ask," said the master builder, "is for the moon in the sky. And the third, the sun that shines during the day." Balder, most handsome of all the gods, said, "This is ridiculous. You cannot have the sun and the moon." "It is what I request for the building of such a wall, and I guarantee that I could have the wall finished in as little as 3 years." Odin looked upon the builder. "We need to discuss this. How about you go and wait?" The builder nodded his head and led out his horse. The gods looked at one another and began to debate. "It's a ridiculous request," said Freya. "We should have him beat for his impetulance and sent away." The gods all agreed. Bragi, god of poetry, complained that they could not lose the moon. Frey, Freya's brother, said it was ridiculous that he even had the nerve to ask for Freya's hand in marriage. The gods all agreed. Just when they were about to send the builder away, Loki cleared his throat, looking for attention, and all gods turned to him. "Why don't we grant this builder his request?" said Loki. "Think about it. The wall he is required to build is an impossible task to commit in 3 years. Even with all the gods working together, we could not build such a wall in 100 years. The gods agreed. "So," said Loki, "why don't we give him 1 year? 1 year to build the wall, with no outside help. He will fail in his task. Why? Asked Balder. What would we gain from this? Are you all such idiots? Said Loki. If he is half the builder he claims to be, from 1 year of free labor, we will have the foundations to build the rest of our wall, with no cost to us. The gods thought and agreed. How smart was Loki? They were lucky he was on their side. And so Odin summoned the builder back into his hall. We have thought about your offer, said Odin, and we potentially accept it, but we have terms. You would have 1 year to build the wall. In 1 year alone. You could have no outside help. Only you. The builder thought about this. I would need the help of my horse to bring stones from the quarry. The gods agreed that this was acceptable, and so the builder set off to work. That night the gods drank in the halls and celebrated how clever they were. They laughed that they would have their foundations built for free, and this builder would strain himself for 1 year for nothing. Freya, however, did not laugh, she did not drink, and she did not celebrate. The next day the gods went out to see the builder starting his task, and start it he did. He dug ditches, faster and more furious than any man they had ever seen. They watched in awe as the builder dug ditches deeper and deeper, at a rate they couldn't believe. I've never seen a man dig ditches quite like this, said Balder. He digs ditches better than any of us could. Well, obviously he's a great dig ditcher, said Loki. Clearly the man is a master dig ditcher. But digging ditches and building a wall as promised are two very different things. Remember, this wall must be larger, so large that no giant can cross it, so thick that no troll can break it, and so tightly put together that no ant could find its way through it. We have nothing to worry about. Freya scowled at Loki and walked off. The gods all set about their day, and later looked on at the builder as he was finished digging the last of the ditches for the foundation. None of them could believe that in the space of a day he had dug the ditches. The builder then set about attaching a stone boat onto his horse and heading off to the quarry to collect rocks. The quarry is some distance away, said Loki. He won't be back for days, and even when he is, he won't be able to bring many rocks. It'll take him months to gather enough materials that we even need to fret. There's no way he can complete this task. And they watched as the builder set off on his horse. The next morning, the builder returned from the quarry with his horse, dragging a stone boat with 20 large rocks, each as large as a man. The gods couldn't believe it. How could one man and one horse bring back so much? At this rate, he would have more material faster than anyone could imagine. He shouldn't have even been able to make it back to Asgard in the amount of time he did. The gods weren't so sure anymore. They weren't so convinced that things would go the way they had planned. Weeks passed, and then months, and the wall came closer and closer. It grew at a rate none of them could believe. Time ticked away, and the wall got larger and larger, thicker and thicker, tighter and tighter. Each night, the builder would head out to the quarry, and each morning he would return with 20 rocks, each larger than a man. And every day, the wall would come closer to completion. The gods began to debate. No man could do this, said Odin. The builder must be a giant of some sort. It's too late now, said Balder. We've given him our word. We need to see this through. If I have to go and marry a giant, said Freya, if I have to go to Jotunheim, then I want the god's head responsible for this on a stick. Who could remember which god was responsible, said Loki. If I remember, we all agreed on it. It was you, Loki, said Freya. It was you who talked us into this. You and your smugness, and the gods followed like idiots to the slaughter. I want your head. Loki tried to object, but he looked around the room and saw all the gods looking at him, and knew his pleas would fall on deaf ears. So be it, said Odin. Loki will suffer a slow and painful death should the builder complete his task. I don't know what you want me to do about this, said Loki. I don't know how we can fix this without going back on our word. You better think of something, said Freya, or your head is literally on the line. Loki got up and left the room. The next morning, a chestnut mare pranced around the hills and the grass by Asgard and found Svadilfari, the builder's horse. It rubbed up against him and danced in front of him, and eventually Svadilfari started to chase the chestnut mare. The builder came for his horse, trying to get his help, but Svadilfari did not pay attention to its master. Instead, it chased the chestnut mare left and right, back and forward, as if the horses were dancing in some sort of planned mating ritual. The builder chased after Svadilfari, but every time he got close, the chestnut mare turned and bolted in the other direction, as if it knew exactly what the builder was doing. Then, without warning, the chestnut mare sprinted off into the woods, and Svadilfari followed. The builder called for his horse. He spent hours calling Svadilfari's name, but Svadilfari did not come. Eventually, the builder resigned that he would have to complete the task without the horse, grabbed the stone boat, and dragged it out to the quarry with his own 2 hands. It was slow moving, but it did move. Days passed when the builder returned from the quarry dragging the stone boat, this time with only 10 rocks on it, each larger than a man, but half as many as he could have brought with his horse, and it took twice as long. He returned to Asgard, and the gods stood and laughed and bragged. It would take 4 times that many rocks for you to complete the wall in time, said the gods, and they laughed and felt good about themselves. Well, the builder was not too happy. You've cheated, said the builder. We have not, said the gods. We did not interfere. We did not get involved in your wall. We did nothing. We stood by and watched. You have failed on your own arrogance. Well, with that, the builder began to rage, and then he began to grow. He grew in size, 2 times the size, 3 times the size, until he stood at over 100 feet. I am a mountain giant, said the builder, and now I will crush you all. If I cannot take Freya, the most beautiful of all the gods, then I will destroy the gods. Well, the gods smiled and made way, and the giant saw the last thing he would ever see, a large, red-headed, bearded god standing behind him, Thor, who threw his hammer towards the giant. Months later, Loki returned to Asgard with an 8-legged horse that he called Sleipnir. He presented the horse to Odin. It was the fastest and strongest horse that ever lived and ever would live. No gods ever spoke of Sleipnir's parentage, and if they did, Loki never let them forget it. And that is the story of how the Asgardians got their wall. It's the story of how Odin got his 8-legged horse. And it's a story that I personally very much enjoy. I think it shows perfectly the relationship between Loki and the other gods, particularly Freya. And while it ends in a similar manner to many Norse tales, with Thor hitting something with his hammer, I really enjoy the focus of the story and how it more follows the other gods for a change, as many of the Norse tales do tend to focus on Thor. Also, by the time it's got to the end of Thor smashing something with his hammer, I actually feel like it's really earned that ending. Let me know in the comments whether you enjoyed this story, and if exploring the myths and legends of other places is something you would like to see me return to occasionally. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me for our next episode in 2 weeks' time. Until then, may the devil walk behind you. Bye for now.